and we have Lieutenant Ryan Junas with us. He presents all over the place on this topic, which is financial wellness and planning for retirement. He's also a Superman because he's still a cop while he's doing all of this stuff. So I don't know how he's doing it, but he'll tell us about all that and his plans for retirement and how he's taking care of this stuff. So Ryan, thanks for joining us. This was long overdue that you had a chance to come in and work with us. So thanks for dedicating today for it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and for putting this conference together. I am excited. I do have a year and a half till I'm eligible for retirement, but we'll talk more about that. But like Dara said, my name is Ryan Junas. I'm a police lieutenant with a large agency here in Arizona. I'm also a financial advisor. I work with a firm that I partnered with, a friend of mine, Integrity Financial Group, and I love talking about money. And it's something I am passionate about that has really changed who I am, because I used to be terrible with money. And we'll get into that because you kind of I like to learn from other people's examples, other people's failures, and what better way than for me to present to you all the failures that I had in my life and how I was able to dig out from the dark depths of debt and be much more successful with money and relieve a lot of those stresses. So I'm excited to be presenting today to kind of tell you what worked for me and what may work for you and how we can move forward and really retire with a life that we deserve. Because as first responders, if you're anything like me, we signed up and we kind of expected, or at least I did, that I would be poor my entire life. That, okay, you didn't sign up for the money, you didn't sign up to do this to get rich, you're just going to subject yourself. We're always going to be struggling to have money or have enough to get it by. But that's really not the case if we do it right. So we'll get into it. Because I am registered with FINRA, I have to do all the legal mumbo jumbo that the lawyers make me say, as well as FINRA. So you guys can read through it there. I won't bore you, but as we talk today, I really want you to understand that personal finance is personal. So I'm going to talk a lot about money all the way from the beginning of a basic budget all the way to what to expect in retirement and how to plan for retirement. And it is not a one size fits all. And I think many people get in that habit of telling others this is the way you should do it, or it's only done this way. And there's not one path. We all have different paths to get there, but it's really looking at the core foundation of what can make you successful so that you're not stressed about money at the end of every month or at the end of every week. So what we're going to learn today. So about moving forward, even if we feel like quitting, because I have had my fair share of financial difficulties, as we'll put it lightly, as we go forward, but saying, you know what, this is not the end. This is not the do all for it. There's steps to get out of it, and there is a light on the other side. So we're going to talk about how to build wealth for your personal goals, the power of compound interest in conjunction with time, some common retirement vehicles that are available to first responders, as well as ensuring your investments actually match your goals. Because many of us, as we near retirement, I was definitely this way of saying, okay, I want to have this much in my deferred comp or drop account, right? Well, is that really going to sustain you throughout retirement? Is that going to be enough to take all those vacations you want? Are we going to run out of money? You may have heard about the 4% rule. We'll talk about things like that. So are your investments actually going to help you reach those goals throughout retirement? So, so exciting. Let's talk a little bit about me. So again, Ryan Junas, I'm a lieutenant with the large police department. I've been on the department for 18 and a half years, year and a half till I'm eligible for retirement. Selfishly, I am looking forward to it because there is life outside of police work, as all of you may or may not know, and fire as well, first responders, not just police. So if you're still in this career for 30 years, God bless you. It's amazing to me how many of us that sacrifice our lives for this career and continue to do it on a daily basis. So thank you for all you do. So let me tell you a little bit about me. So I started my financial journey like any of us, right? As a teenager, getting an allowance, working at basic jobs to try to make some money. And my parents, the only instruction that I received from my parents on how to manage money was how to balance a checkbook. And they told me not to go into debt. So with that financial knowledge that I had going to be an adult, I spent what I made, and I didn't have huge amounts of credit card debt. I just knew that if I didn't have credit card debt, it was okay, and I was doing all right because I didn't know any better. So I got hired on the police department at 20 and a half years old. So fresh out of college with my 2-year degree. And I get into the police department, and I remember my FTO was the only person who told me about money, my field training officer. And he said his only advice to me was make sure you contribute to your deferred compensation account. And that was it. He didn't say how much, how often, if I had any kind of goals. So for me, I felt 21 years old at the time. I'm getting a pension. I don't really need to invest any extra money, right? Because I get a pension and that'll be there forever for me. So this is just kind of icing on the cake, right? So I started putting $50 a month into my deferred compensation account, and I was living high. I'm like, you know what? I'm investing. I know what I'm doing. I'm doing all right. And you can probably imagine how that ended up. $50 a month does not go very far, and it does not compound very quickly. It really, if at all. So that was my beginnings of money. So also, as a young, spry 21-year-old, I was still living with my parents. I said, I got to get out of my parents' house, right? I'm a brand new police officer, top of the world, driving a fast car with a gun and a badge. I have to get a house. I have to move out. And at the time, I said, you know what? I don't want to rent a house because renting is expensive, and it's a waste of money, right? So this was in 2004. And some of you history buffs may kind of remember around 2004, 2005, what happened in those times up to around 2008. But 2004, I had to move out. So I found a condo in Tempe, which was all I could afford at the very top of my loan amount that I was able to get. So how did I know how much to spend on a house? I went to a bank. The bank said, here's a pre-approval letter. Well, if you have bought a house before, you know those pre-approval letters are like astronomically high numbers that they take before all the taxes come out, and it's very difficult to pay. So I'm like, okay, well, this is how much a house I have to buy, but the house I wanted was a little more than that. So I had this it wasn't my idea. It was taught to me, and I thought it was a great idea that, oh, you know what, let's get an interest-only loan so that I only pay the interest on this 30-year loan, and I'll just worry about it in 5 years when this ARM kicks in and there's an adjustable rate down the road, right? They don't allow a lot of those loans anymore because of some issues and all the foreclosures that happened in 2008, one of which I was, because I'm at the very top of my budget. 5 years goes down the road, 2008, 2009, the adjustable interest rate kicks in, my payment goes through the roof, and I cannot make the payments no matter how much off duty I do. So insert embarrassing foreclosure here early on in my life. You might say, what in the world? Why, this guy's our instructor? I'm telling you, it gets a little better. Hopefully, we'll see. So actually during this time also, so I meet my wife, and I'm like, I'm going to get married. I'm 24. It's right around the foreclosure time, 24 years old. I say, I want to marry this woman. So the way I had learned is if I had $2,000 in my checking account, I felt I was doing good. So I had about $300 on any given day in my savings, $2,000 in my checking, $50 a month in my deferred compensation, a ridiculous mortgage payment that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with, and I want to get married. Excellent idea, right? So I go out and I buy an engagement ring for my wife that costs more than $2,000, so I put it on a credit card. So I get a lot of high fives from some of my guy friends, but the women kind of glare at me when I say this. But so I asked my wife to marry me, we get married, and my wife actually helps me pay off her own engagement ring. As embarrassing as that is to this day, extremely embarrassing. I get high fives from the guys like, hey, that's awesome. But you know, as a person, I'm like, oh my gosh, looking back on it now, how embarrassing, because we ended up sharing our finances, putting everything together, shared credit card debt, paying off our own ring. Yeah. Vehicle loans. Okay, so we also get married and we're like, hey, you know what? We need some new vehicles. We're brand new married. So my wife gets this super nice Tahoe, $800 a month payment. I get an Xterra at the time. So we got, $1,300 worth of vehicle payments because that's what you do. And if you're anything like me, I was taught as a kid, or I was under the impression that if a vehicle went around 100,000 miles, it was going to break down and it would cost way more to repair it than it was worth, and it was not worth it. So get rid of a vehicle when it gets close to 100,000 and buy a new vehicle. That was in my head, so that's what I did. So that's how I started. So that's where I start. Actually, I'll kind of fast forward a few years. So my wife and I go 5+ years of living paycheck to paycheck, and it's stressed out. As a brand new husband and wife, and we have a new baby on the way, it is stressful to make ends meet, even dealing with a new marriage and a new baby. So I remember at one point, and it's all credit in the world to my wife, is we're sitting at an Applebee's, and she says to me, "Do you have any idea how much money you spent eating out at work over the past month?" I had no idea because I didn't pack a lunch ever because I was lazy, and I like eating out. So every meal, so I would eat out, second shift, I would eat out on shift, and then coming home from work, I'd stop at Jack in the Box, eat something, and it just racked up. So she had told me, "You spent $1,000 eating out at restaurants last month." And that's not anything that we were doing on our own. That was just me personally. And it was at that moment that it really hit me, like, what am I doing? $1,000 eating out at restaurants just for me. It hit me that I was not getting the value out of the $1,000 a month that I was spending on a regular basis. Like, yeah, it was great at the time, but it was frivolous. It was ridiculous. So it was kind of at that point that we decided there's got to be a different way. So we read all kinds of financial books, all kinds of budget books to figure out, are we really doomed to be poor for the rest of our lives? So my wife at the time was still is stay-at-home wife and mother, because we wanted her to stay home with the kids. So things were tight as a police officer. So fast forward. So after that D-Day that we decided, you know what, I need to stop screwing around and get serious and learn about money and find out if there's a different way. 7 years after that, from that day, we were able to pay off our mortgage. So we had a new home at the time. We paid off our mortgage. We have, even now, 0 debt. We take 2 to 3 vacations every year that we pay for in cash. Money is no longer a stress. I'm a licensed financial advisor. Because of all the obstacles I've been through, I decided I want to learn how to do this because I'm tired of living this way. So I'm telling you that you may be in a deep, dark hole full of debt, or you may be nearing retirement and not sure what's going to happen. There are always ways out. So if I can do it, I'm pretty sure anyone else can, because I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I know where to find the answers, luckily now. So I'm excited to present this to you because I hated life in the past. At the end of every month, knowing those bills were coming, I wanted to ignore it. I didn't want anything to do with bills. My wife paid the bills because I hated looking at it. And now I don't even know when payday is. And you might say, "Oh, it's because you're a lieutenant, Ryan." Okay, that contributes to it now. But I will tell you, every promotion I had from officer to sergeant, I did not increase my spending. And we'll talk about that. So when I promoted sergeant, my entire raise and all raises thereafter went towards paying off debt or going towards goals. So the base money that we lived on every month stayed the same. So yes, it helped catapult me to achieve our goals, but we still were able to maintain living on the same amount as an officer's salary. So it's about discipline. And as first responders, we are incredibly disciplined at our jobs, right? You spend 40 plus 50 hours a week at jobs telling people what to do, where to go, solving everyone's problems, and you get home and you don't want to deal with anything. You don't want to decide where you want to go out to eat tonight because someone else figured out. I'm tired of making decisions, right? You don't want to think about it anymore. So it's about taking that discipline we have at work, setting up policies and plans and procedures at your own home so that you don't have to think about it and things start to run on autopilot and you set yourself up for success rather than stressing out all the time. So discipline, Munger says, the habit of saving is itself an education. It fosters every virtue, teaches self-denial, cultivates the sense of order, trains to forethought, and so broadens the mind. So when you really start to save money and see how easy it can be if you make the right cuts and decisions, it's empowering. And it's something that I found, and I pray that you can find that as well if you haven't already. And I know I'm speaking to a broad audience, so some of you may be totally fine, and you're like, I got $500,000 in my retirement account. I'm not in debt. I'm looking forward. We'll get there and talk about that to make sure if that money really is enough. But first, we got to talk about the other people in the room that might be struggling with some debt. Maybe they have $15,000 on a credit card with a 24% interest that they're struggling to meet minimum payments. So you have to realize that debt is going to be the greatest enemy to you being able to retire, to you be able to go on those vacations, to buy that RV, to go on those golfing trips, whatever you want to do. Debt is going to crush it and keep you from being able to do that. So with suffocating debt, you will never be able to build wealth. Deal with your debt problem before you begin to build wealth. Because if you're trying to go here and build wealth, but you got debt pulling you down, you're going to go nowhere fast. So we'll talk about that. And briefly, I didn't put a picture in this. I have this in some other presentations, but you drive through any of our precincts and it is amazing the vehicles that some of these officers have. I mean, they $80,000, $90,000 lifted trucks, 4x4s, and I'm like, I know how much you make a year. There's no way you can be able to afford that, you know? So we find ways to deal with stress. We'll get into that also with spending and with rewarding ourselves with debt. Say you get promotion to sergeant or you get promoted to a captain, the fire department, and we like to reward ourselves. I make more money, I got to go buy a new toy. I got to go reward myself with debt. And we're punishing our future selves. So if we can kind of transition our mindset to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to reward my future self while still living in today, we're going to be all the better for it. So financial stress, and I've been doing this for years, financial seminars and meeting with people individually and with my financial firm of money is so taboo, we hate to talk about it. We don't like to say how much do we make, whereas we can Google most of our names and find out exactly how much money we're making, but we don't talk about what we're putting in for retirement. It's a taboo, a topic we don't talk about, which can lead to depression, leads to headaches, crying, anger, insomnia, alcohol abuse, substance abuses, problems with your marriage, problems with your kids. Pretty much any problem that you have in your life could be tied to money if it's an issue in your life. So it's really uncovering, okay, I have that alcohol abuse problem, right? So I have to have a drink to fall asleep every night. Why? Maybe it's the job and your money's fine. I'm not taking that away from anyone that has PTSD or other issues that they're dealing with. I'm saying, but there are some people that are struggling with debt and money, and that's how they cope with it. And really uncovering the reasons we're bad with money and giving each other the tools and being able to talk about it openly without judging each other is going to set us up for success. And that's what DAR's whole conference is about, is talking about things, exposing the dark underbelly of the things we do in life and how to find solutions to it. And that all of us are living the same type of life, right? We all struggle differently. I take that none from anybody else, but we all have struggles. So just because you're struggling with debt and money, don't think the person in your break room or briefing room isn't struggling with the exact same thing. So the big picture, again, I told you there is not a one-stop shop, not a one-size-fits-all. This is a very basic way of dealing with money in a structured way, and we all love structure. So the best way to do it, say we're struggling with debt, we want to get on a financial plan and we want to start building wealth so we can someday retire when we're not 90 years old. We have to have an emergency fund. So that's step one. You can see all the way to the left. $2,000 emergency fund, if you can have that in a checking account sitting there in cash, so that when your vehicle breaks down, you don't have to go swipe a credit card for $1,500 and hope you can pay it off within the next paycheck, or get that paycheck loan or payday loan. Having that emergency fund so that when you have an unexpected consequence, financial consequence, you pay for it cash and then you replenish and get that fund back up is like an insurance policy for yourself. So that's step one. You have to build that up before you can do much of anything. Some employer plans now have matches, employer match retirements. Some police departments, I know ours has a hybrid plan with our city. If you have an employer match retirement, that is free money. So if you get a 3% match or a 4 or 5% match, if you can invest that much into your deferred compensation package or your 401a or your 403b, whatever you have with your department or your organization, that's 100%. You put $100 in, your organization puts $100 in. You just made $100 every month. So get that employer match. That's incredibly important. And then high interest debts, the credit cards that people struggle with, the 24%, the payday loans, which, you know, up to 50% interest, it's ridiculous and it should be criminal. And some legislation has started to come in. It's not allow these incredibly inflated interest rates, but people will still struggle with it because it's such a huge controlling aspect of our economy is debt. So getting rid of those credit cards, being able to say, you know what, I'm going to use a credit card every month and I'm going to pay it off every month. And I'm going to take advantage of the credit card company and actually make money off them. So quick story on that. So when my wife and I, we didn't just flip a switch and all of a sudden, bing, we're great with money, right? We don't have any more debt. We know what we're doing. No, absolutely not. It took a year and a half for us to figure that out. And what we started doing is a system called a cash envelope system. And for any of you that have seen Dave Ramsey, he's famous for making it, coming up with it and pushing forward it. But what it means is you take a certain amount of money out at the beginning of each month in cash and you put it in an envelope. So say you're going to put a monthly grocery budget of $800 a month in. So that means you take $800 in cash, you put it in an envelope, and when you go to the grocery store, you take some cash out and you pay for it in cash. When you run out of cash in that envelope, you're done. There's no credit card, there's no nothing. So if you're living on ramen noodle for the last 2 weeks of the month, it'll quickly gear you up to say, you know what, I don't want to live like this anymore. I better start cutting back on the steak and lobster that I'm buying during the month, right? Or eating out one day less a month, something that'll help you. So my wife and I did that. We hated it because it's an incredible inconvenience. So we taught ourselves, like, do we want to keep doing this cash envelope thing? Or do we want to just figure out how to budget with credit cards? So we decided to do that, and that really kicked us into gear. So now we actually make money off credit card companies because we carry zero balances and we get the points, and everything we buy, we use credit cards, and then we pay it off the month and we get the cash back. So there are different ways of doing things, but if you struggle with credit cards, don't put yourself in a position for failure. Just do the cash until you train yourself not to overspend. So paying off that high interest debt. So the 3-month cash reserves, there's different opinions. Some people say 3 months, some people say 6 months. So 3 months cash reserves is entirely up to you what you think about that. So as first responders, our jobs are pretty secure. Outside of getting indicted for something or ending up in the media and getting fired, we struggle to get anyone to do our jobs. So the reason for cash reserves that people teach is if you are in a job that is not incredibly secure, where there's a chance you're not going to make it, you could get fired every day because it's competitive, you want to make sure that if you get fired tomorrow, you at least have some cash on hand to get you until you get a new job. So that's the whole point of that, is the 3 months cash reserves, or 6 months if you have a high volatile employer. So I would say for first responders, our jobs are pretty secure. 3-month cash reserves is probably sufficient, but again, it depends on each person's own individual circumstance. So your role, we have to take control of our money. So money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver. If you ignore your money, it is going to come back rearing its ugly head. So you have to tell it where to go. It's like you're a child at home. Do this. It's time to go to bed. If you were only spending $800 this month eating at restaurants or whatever, not 800 at restaurants, maybe depends on how much you're making, but I'm saying 800 on a food budget, etc. Tell it what to do. Don't be surprised at the end of the month, be like, wow, where did I spend my money? So tell it where to go, and it'll become a system where it's not stressful to do that. So how do we do this? How do we tell our money where to go? So my wife and I still do this on a monthly basis. And like I said, we have no debt, we have all these things, but we still do a budget, because if we didn't, we may end up right back where we were. So a monthly spending plan, it tells you where's your, actually here, sorry, I can't see there's a slide. It tells your money where to go rather than wondering where it went. You designate certain specific areas where you want your money to end up, and you tell it and you make it do it. So it helps you spend money on things that bring you value rather than spending out of habit. I was very much a habit spender, and I still struggle with that today. Man, I'm gonna go get a coffee. I don't want to make coffee. I'll just grab Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts on the way to work. And before you know it, you're going to Dunkin' Donuts every single day before work, when you could easily just make it in your Keurig, right? So no offense if anyone drinks their coffee or buys it. You can afford your Dunkin' Donuts every morning, go do it. You know what I mean? But don't, make sure it's not adding up to your credit cards. So the budget gives you a clear path and purpose for your money to achieve your financial goals. And that's how my wife and I were able to pay off our home. We made that a goal. And there's all kinds of people can argue back and forth. It doesn't make financial sense to pay off your mortgage. I agree. It does not make mathematical sense if you have a 3% interest rate on your mortgage, but you could make, say, 8% in an index fund, or 7%. Yeah, it makes more sense to invest it. But for me and for us, it was that financial security of knowing, if I lose my job tomorrow, my kids and my wife can still stay in our house. So that's why I go back to personal finance is incredibly personal. It's not a one size fits all. So how do we do a monthly budget? I'm not going to, I mean, I could talk for hours on a budget plan and all of you would sign off and get bored and not want to listen to me anymore. But how do we do one? It's really just talking about how much income do you have coming in and how much do you have going out and where is it going out? So as long as your money going out is less than the money coming in, we're making forward progress, right? And there's always places we can cut back and do better because we all waste money. I waste money. And it's not about not spending on things that you want to occasionally because you still have to live, right? You hear about some of those people that spend all their time investing for retirement and then they have an accident and they die 2 years later, right? They never even got to enjoy their money. So I'm not talking about ending life now and just waiting for retirement. You still have to live now, but we have to do it responsibly. So getting uncomfortable. So say we want to make some cuts here. We want to get our money back on track. It's going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. If you really have hit your end and you're like, enough's enough, there's going to be a different way. So you got to start making cuts, put money towards things that bring you value. Rather than me eating out every night, I needed to suck it up and make my lunch. And I didn't like doing it, but you know what? Having an extra $1,000 a month was totally worth it. And yeah, it was quickly worth it. It was painful at first, and now I bring my lunch every day, and I don't even think about it twice because it's just a habit. It's developing those disciplines and habits, and making those hard choices. Cut out the waste. Do you have too much house? Right. So there are many people in my organization that live in beautiful homes, right? 4,000, 5,000 square foot homes. They're gorgeous. And what do? They work 3 days a week, all of their days off duty to pay for this house that they're never at because they like their things that they can rarely use because they're always having to work for them. So it's like really it is what you're spending money on bringing you value. And again, you can afford it, have all the toys you want in the world. You know what I mean? As long as it aligns with your personal goals. And like I said, with the coffee, the short-term pain, making my lunch, it'll subside. I don't think twice about it. And if it's something that truly does not bring you value that you're just doing out of a habit, you'll quickly change that habit and you won't miss it. So cash reserves, I briefly talked about this. Depending on the financial security of your job, you should have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up under a mattress in cash that you can access at any given time, just in case. And this should, again, 6 months is a long time. And I'm talking very basics, like what do you need to pay the mortgage? What do you need to keep the lights on? What do you need to keep the water coming? I'm not talking about any going clothes shopping or going out to eat, none of that. Like the very basic bones that you need to survive on a monthly basis, keep that in kind of a reserve as you start to build up for retirement, just in case. Like I said, living expenses means only the minimum needs to survive: food, shelter, clothing, transportation, utilities, and minimum debt payments. And that's something that people forget is when they look at where should my money be going, a debt payment is a need. Okay, because if you don't pay your debts, people come start repossessing things. You start having bankruptcy issues. So your debt payments, get those things paid off. Again, we could have a whole nother class on what's the best way to pay off debt, in what order, but not for this time, for another class. All right, so the big picture. So say we got those reserves and we've already started an employer match. If we have it, let's really start investing heavily, at least 15% for retirement. And I know there's going to be a lot of people saying, holy smokes, why so much for investing for retirement? I get a pension. I can get 50% minimum, or I might get up to 80% if I stay those 32 years. We'll talk about it. Because as a pensions are only good as the funds that are funding them, right? And we've all seen the pension crises that are occurring across the nation. I'll talk more about that. But in my agency, I think we were like 40% funded 5 to 10 years ago. Like it was not good. We're finally getting back on track with all the pension reforms, but it's scary. And do you really want to trust the government to take care of you? So perfect. This kind of segues into exactly what I'm talking about. So what about my pension, right? So tons of news articles constantly. Detroit, right? Detroit had this huge thing. It's your pension is a blessing and we deserve it. We work our butts off for a minimum of 20 years. Now the new hires in my agency have to work a minimum of 25 years, work past age 50 before they can even retire. So when you reach that goal where you're eligible for that pension, you earned it and you deserved it. And I don't want to take that away from you. I just want you to think in the back of your mind that what if it isn't funded and it goes away? Are you going to be like, for my agency, we don't contribute to Social Security. So I don't get Social Security when I retire. So I don't even have that blanket to save for me. So really for myself and my family, I'm like, you know, we have to put money away in the event that the pension goes away. And it's not that hard to do if you get used to living on less while still enjoying life. So if my pension's still there when I retire, it's going to be icing on the cake, and you'll be able to do amazing things with your retirement plans if you plan for the pension possibly not being there and still being able to survive. I'm not talking about living lavishly, but being able to survive. So 2 questions to ask yourself, like I told you, do you trust the government with your money? I bet most, if not all of you, would say absolutely not. We don't trust the government. They're frivolous spending. We all work for government. We know how governments spend. And will your pension be enough? So that's another one too. So recently they reinstated in my state the cost of living adjustments, but they're capped at 2%. And you all know in Arizona, over the past year to date, we're 13% inflation rate for the past year over year. 13%. That 2% COLA is not going to be keeping up with that. So it's great that we have a COLA for now, cost of living adjustments in our pensions, but is it going to keep up with inflation? Hopefully the feds can get this inflation under control, but it's something that we all have to deal with. So growing wealth, we're going to kind of switch gears now. So I've bored you all to death with budgeting and getting out of debt. So let's talk about the fun stuff, right? The goals, the dreams, the retirement, the vacations homes, the beach vacation, whatever your retirement goal is. How are we going to get there? And it's by building wealth. And that does not include sticking money under your mattress, because it will be extremely difficult for you to save up $500,000 by sticking it under your mattress without the help of compound interest. So wealth is created by making consistent investments over time. Time is your best friend, but also can be your biggest obstacle. So what do I mean by that? So it's not great. So say you're in your 18th year, like I am right now, and I'm like, oh man, I have not invested for retirement. I better put $50,000 into some kind of investment fund and hope it grows, right? It will grow, maybe not right now with how the market's down, but eventually over time, longevity, it's shown in the past that your money should grow over time. Well, that $50,000 now is not going to grow anywhere near as quickly as $50,000 in year 2 or 3 as a police officer would be. Okay, and I want to show you what I mean by that. So compound interest, it's Albert Einstein said it's the 8th wonder of the world. It is pretty amazing. So for instance, this is just a simple compound interest calculator I found online on moneychimp.com. So let's say you want to be a millionaire, you want to have $1 million in your retirement account. What does it take? All right, so if you look at historical market returns, it's about 7.9% of the S&P 500, meaning the market in general, that's what it's averaged since its inception. It doesn't indicate that's what's going to happen tomorrow or in the next 5 years, but over the past. So we'll use this as a hypothetical example. If you were able to put $13,000 every year into your retirement account and let it grow for 25 years, theoretically, you could have $1 million with only $13,000 in your account. So right now, our deferred compensations, we can put $20,500 away in every year pre-tax. I know that might be a stretch for most, if not all of us, but it's just kind of something to show you here. If even you and your spouse, you split that up, you know, you do 6,500, your spouse does 6,500. There's your 13,000. If you could do that for 25 years, you should have, it's very possible you have $1 million if you go off that 7.9% interest rate. So again, paid twice a month, that's only 26 paychecks. That's $500 per paycheck. And this is where tax deferred retirement comes into play. So you're like, I can't take $500 out of my paycheck. Well, this is the thing. When you get paid and you do pre-tax, it's actually less. So to have $500 go into your investment account, you're only going to see about a $375 deduction from your after-tax money when it comes to you. So the pre-tax is a big blessing. You'll pay taxes down the road, but being able to do that beforehand out of your check is going to hurt a lot less than trying to invest after-tax money. So again, you may have $1 million with that 7.9% compound interest, and you only invested $325,000 of your own money. That's why it's so amazing. And it's time. It's not you're going to put this money in and in 2 years you've quadrupled your money. No, it's about time. So target retirement contributions, if you really want to ensure some stability and a financial plan to make sure that it's sustainable in retirement for what your goals are. And again, everyone's goals are different, but for the vast majority of clients I meet, 15 to 18% of their income is what's necessary to make sure that they can sustain the quality of life that they want. So aim to save 15%. And I don't expect you to say, okay, tomorrow I invest 2% of my income right now into retirement. I don't expect you tomorrow to be like, all right, let's do 15%, because that's going to hurt. You're not going to like it, and you may quit and say, absolutely not. I can't afford this huge increase. I'm not going to be able to do it. So some ways to increase it. And I think that actually might be the next slide. Let me cheat. All right, perfect. Is on the next slide. So there's tricks and hacks that you can do to trick yourself into investing more without actually seeing it hit your checks on a monthly basis. So we talked about some of these different retirement accounts, the traditional 401k, Roth IRAs, 403bs for teachers. And then for most of us in public safety, we're going to have that 457 Bravo. Not all agencies have it. I have run into a few number of them that don't have it, but whatever retirement vehicle you have, make sure you're putting something away and not banking just on that pension. All right, so how do we get up to that 15 or 18%? Because that sounds incredibly difficult to do. So first of all, pay yourself first. That's those automatic deductions. So it's kind of like a set it and forget it, put it as a percentage. And percentages are great. I suggest people put a percentage into retirement rather than a fixed dollar amount, so that when you get those overtime shifts or those bonuses, or well, government, we don't get bonuses, but you get some of those overtime shifts, you don't have to worry about trying to increase it. Like, oh, I'm making more this month, maybe I should increase my contributions. It'll automatically do it with whatever's coming in. So pay yourself first, put it in a percentage. And defer raises. If you're going to get a bump in a raise and you are able to live right now with what you're taking home, when you get that raise, take that entire amount of that raise and just shift it to retirement, and you won't see any impact to your take-home pay. That's how I was able to get mine. I'm actually up about 20% now into retirement, and I was able to get that by starting at 10%, and every year I increased my contributions by 1%, and that's how I was able to get up as high as I did, and I never saw an impact in my take-home. So if you need to take your time, do it, just as long as you're making some progress toward it. Another one, tax refunds. This is one of my favorites, because you probably all have the friends that as soon as they get their taxes back, they go out and buy the boat, they go out and buy something. They're like, sweet, I got my tax money back, let's go buy something. This is not a fun thing to do, but there's an option. You could take that $6,000, $5,000 tax rebate if you're getting it and put it into retirement. So not fun. It's not enjoyable at all, but it's an option, and that'll quickly help you get up to those limits that you're trying to reach for your goals. And again, this goes back to the lifestyle creep of deferring raises. Avoid the issues of spending more because you're making more, because it's like if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you get a raise and you start spending more money, you're in the same boat and you're still miserable. So avoid that lifestyle creep by taking those increases and moving them to different places, or moving them towards paying off debt, moving them to paying off your house if that's what you want to do. So transitioning, now we want to really get into that retirement piece now. Transitioning from working full-time into retirement. And this is what's scary. And this is what was really scary for me, because I had thought, I want to meet this number in my deferred compensation package. Is it going to be enough based on my pension with all of that? I have no idea. How long is it going to last? I don't know. What if I take $5,000 out of my retirement plan a month? Is that going to be enough? And do you have enough? So this is where I would suggest that you at least meet with some kind of fiduciary financial advisor as you near retirement. You don't have to hire them or sign up with them, but at least meet with them and to see what they have to say, because financial planners and advisors can really show you year by year what projections are in retirement and what you can safely take out without bankrupting yourself in the future. So that's something my team and I do on an active basis. And I want to kind of show you the programs that we use and how you can really plan for retirement rather than just guessing and hoping on a prayer that it's going to work. So here we go, a clear view of your picture. So this is an actual client of mine who will remain nameless, of course. So this person came in and she said, and she's not our first responder, so I'm not going to put her into that bucket. So she is an outside person, and she says she's 55 years old, says, I want to retire in 5 years, and I want my husband to retire in 5 years. And I said, okay, so retiring at age 60, and some of you that are good with money may see some potential red flags here in a minute. So at age 60, she wants to retire and she wants to live off of $5,000 a month. Okay, that seems reasonable. All right. So some obstacles she's going to have is, well, we all know that we do not qualify for Medicare until age 65. So what is she going to do in the interim from age 60 to 65? And if your agency is anything like mine or some of these small healthcare plans, I think our healthcare is around $1,600 to $1,800 for a family plan a month in retirement. So that is a huge expense that a lot of us don't plan for. And that's why most of us first responders have to go out and get second jobs after we're retired, because the healthcare alone is astronomical. Second, so this lady does get Social Security, but her Social Security is not going to kick in until age 62 at minimum, if she turns it on. So I went in with that and I said, okay, let's build your plan based off of what you want and what you think you can do. So she had a pretty meager savings account. So she had $132,000 in her 401k. She had $5,000 that she was contributing annually with a company match, and it's 9.3% for them. So she was contributing over $10,000 a year into her retirement account, but she had only gotten up to 132. So you can kind of see where we're going. At $5,000 a month, based on that, she was going to quickly run out of money. So she wanted, based on $5,000 a month, after tax, she wants $67,570 a year to live off of after tax. A reasonable amount of money. However, in year, let's see, 3, 4, age 65, she ran out of money. And that was her plan in 5 years to retire. And I said, hey, time out, like this is where you're at and this is what's going to happen, because you're taking such huge distributions from your retirement plan before your Social Security kicks in, and then for some of you in first responders, before you may have access to your drop account, unless you retire after age 50, things of that nature. Like there are triggers in place that are very important that we recognize. So I said, look, there needs to be some options that are done for you, because this is not feasible. There's no way you can live. You know, she's going to be living off Social Security, which is going to be $14,000 a year after all of her income investments run out of money. So as a financial advisor, I was able to show her, okay, all right, so let's say, and it's not most exciting, but let's say we push retirement off to 65. All right, let's push it off. Let's do 10 more years instead of 5. She's still in good health. Then that kicks up her Social Security from 62 to 65 when she would start taking it, which increases her distribution amount along with her husband. She's able to achieve a little bit more money. We build in some more raises. Now she's only going to be living off of $59,000 a year after tax. However, she doesn't ever run out of money. And a lot of these plans that we put together, it's really just someone seeing it. And if you meet with a financial advisor, a fiduciary that's going to work in your best interest, not theirs, they should be able to show you this and say, hey, look, this is the plan you want. Yeah, your plan's going to work, or it's not, and kind of give you a plan of action going from there. So that's why I say it's invaluable to meet with them. You don't have to hire anybody, but at least see if you're on the right track and if it's someone that you can mesh with and go from there. So with that being said, I think I got 2 minutes left of time. There's so much more I could talk about. I just want to thank you all for your time. I'll flip to my next screen here. This is my name and cell phone number. If you guys ever, you can reach out to call me. If I'm not out on a scene or getting called out, I'll certainly call you back. But as first responders, we are incredibly careful and cynical of people, and trusting people with money is incredibly difficult. So I would say find a fiduciary as you near retirement that you can at least reach out to and talk to see if you're doing all right. I would love to meet with anyone. If you guys want to reach out to me, I'll set up a time. We can go on a Zoom meeting. My team and I go nationwide so we can meet up. But other than that, thank you for all you guys do, and save your money and enjoy that retirement you deserve.
Brian, thanks so much, man. This is an excellent presentation. You've motivated me, and I'll tell you, just within the time that you spoke here today, I changed mine from 11% to 15%. So just like you made an impact on one person.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, thank you. That's huge, man. And I will call you to meet with you, because I think that you have so much value and so much to offer. So I love that you started from, falling into debt, going into foreclosure, and then having that Cinderella story. That's really awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
I have go ahead.
No, and that's really what it takes for most people. It took for me. You have to hit rock bottom before you're going to make change. If you're just kind of biding by, it doesn't really give you much reason to change. So for me alone, it took hitting rock bottom, my wife saying, "You got to be kidding me." So
Hmm. So, I have a question. I have a few questions for you, and I'll see if anybody else has questions as well. I see a lot of comments, and people are loving this. But one of the questions of that 15 to 18% that you mentioned, is that 15% for you and 15% for your spouse, or is that joint?
So again, everyone's different, but the usual course of action is joint. That should be enough for you. Yep.
Okay. And then how many, usually you hear people talk about wealth and they say you should have multiple sources of income. How many sources of income do you think somebody should have to be able to help build financial stability for their future?
So that's a great question, and it's a loaded question because there are many different ways to have your money make money. So for instance, when people talk about diversity or multiple sources of income, they may be talking about real estate, having rental properties. They may be talking about diversity within their 457. They may be talking about real estate investment trust. There's so many different things. So really the core of saying having your money come from many different incomes is we can't all go out and afford to buy rental properties. So if you can't go out and buy 3 houses that you're receiving residual income from, you can still retire. So if all that's available to you is your 457, your 401a, your 403b account, within your account, meaning money coming from different sources, don't put all of your money into Apple stock or all of it in Amazon stock. Maybe 10 years ago, that would have been a great idea. But right now, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So diversifying within there, and different mutual funds and different index funds and different companies will all be paying you dividends from different avenues, so that if one goes out, and that's the whole point of the diversification and multiple sources of income, if one fails, that's where the others will come to support it.
Yeah, that's really great. That's a great answer. I like Patricia's comment there saying that the police academy is now offering and adding financial planning. That's huge.
Patricia, that is amazing.
That's huge.
Our academy, we had someone come in from our employer plan sponsor that came and talked to us for maybe an hour, maybe. But you got a bunch of 20-year-old kids in there that have no idea about anything in the world, so none of us retained anything. But that's awesome that they're at least doing something, because when I started, we were not. So that's
Yeah.
great.
It's funny, Christina typed something there on Kauai that really resonates with me. When we lived in Hawaii, we had 3 jobs, my wife and I each. And I moved here to the mainland and I still have 3 jobs. And I think to myself, that's just you work hard, and some habits are hard to break, you just work hard. Except in Hawaii, you couldn't get ahead, and
Oh,
that's the hard part, is that here in Arizona you can. And that's why we see a lot of people from Hawaii moving to the mainland. It's just very hard. It's so hard to make it. Uh,
no, absolutely.
uh, I have found that people tend to work a lot of overtime and extra shifts to live the lifestyle that they want to have versus their base pay. And then when they get injured on a job and they can't work overtime anymore, they suffer great depression, suicidality, etc. Tell me about your experience with this. And
100%. That is absolutely right. So off duty and these extra jobs, you need to do everything in your power to make sure that money's extra money, because as all of you know, you're one injury away from bankruptcy. As Dara said, you get injured, you go after that shoplifter and you break your leg or ankle, yeah, you're going to get workers' compensation, but all that off-duty money went away. And if you relied on that to pay for your bills, it's a terrible downward spiral. So relying on off-duty or moonlighting jobs to pay your basic bills you have to make some cuts to change that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And in the first responder world, we have this fatalistic sense that you could die tomorrow, you could die the next day. So you see people going out and buying toys, and they just want to have that, have my fun today while I'm alive, because I've read this research. That's what people say. I've read this research that after 5 years after I retire, I'm going to drop dead of a heart attack and die. So why should I plan for the future? What's your answer?
You're going to have a great time now buying all these crazy toys, but what happens when you live 15, 20 years, 30 years in retirement? Those are your golden years when you're supposed to enjoy it. And that's really where I talk about personal finance is personal. I don't expect, and I don't tell any of the clients that I work with that, hey, stop living and just save, like you still have to enjoy things, but it's within reason. Because yeah, I mean, you could die 5 years, you could die tomorrow, but you could die in 50 years. And what are you going to do then? So
Yeah,
within reason.
yeah, that's great. Well, bro, this was fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing, this wisdom that you have. I will let you hop across to the chat to be able to respond to these comments and feedback. And thank you, Ryan. I look forward to working with you more again, and we'll see you soon.
It's good. Thank you guys.
All right.